The sun beat down hard over the dusty plains of Arlen County, its golden rays stretching over endless fields of yellow flowers and cracked soil. Silas Boone wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of a sun-darkened arm. He wasn't the kind of man who talked much. His fields spoke for him, his crops obeyed him, and his land trusted him. A former soldier turned farmer, Silas found peace in planting seeds and watching them grow, a far cry from the life of bullets and battlefields. But peace, as it often did in forgotten corners of the galaxy, was about to get rudely interrupted. He heard the sonic boom before he saw it. A streak of fire lit up the afternoon sky, tearing through the clouds and crashing into the edge of his northern field with a thunderclap that shook the earth beneath his boots. Birds scattered, cattle wailed, and somewhere, the old radio on his porch choked on static. Silas didn't panic. He just sighed, grabbed his blade, a hefty old tool with more rust than shine, and headed toward the smoke. The crash site was a mess of scorched dirt and glowing red metal. At its center, half buried in soil and heat, was a pod unlike anything Silas had ever seen. Sleek, metallic, shaped like a bullet but breathing like a heart. The hatch hissed open with a reluctant groan, steam escaping as if exhaling from a deep sleep. Then she stepped out. Tall. Armored. Blue. The alien warrior moved like liquid power, every step calculated and full of intent. Her skin shimmered under the sun, her eyes glowing faintly like twin moons. She scanned the landscape, her glowing blade drawn, nostrils flaring at the scent of fresh earth and human presence. Silas stood his ground. She raised her weapon. "Stand aside, native," she commanded, her voice cool but heavy with disdain. "You are irrelevant." Silas tilted his head, unimpressed. "This here's my field. You crashed into it. Might be polite to ask before swinging around glow sticks." Her brow furrowed, momentarily confused. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Let alone a farmer. She lunged. Silas dodged on instinct alone. Years of combat buried beneath soil and silence surged through his limbs. The old blade met her energy sword with a crackle, metal resisting light. She was fast, graceful, and relentless. He was stubborn, grounded, and irritatingly unpredictable. Their clash sent sparks flying, destroying stalks of corn and sending ripples through the air. She underestimated him. That was her first mistake. She aimed a high arc slash. Silas ducked low, spun with a grunt, and swung his old blade up with all the force of a seasoned brawler. The edge struck the hilt of her sword, jarring her wrist, and the next moment, she was on the ground, kneeling. Not out of choice. Out of necessity. Her chest heaved as she stared up at him. Not in fear. In fascination. "You," she muttered, brushing dirt off her lips. "You are not, just a native." Silas offered a hand. "Never said I was." She stared at his hand, then took it. What followed wasn't peace. It wasn't war, either. It was something stranger. She introduced herself as Zaret of the Zalari Vanguard, an elite warrior caste bred for conquest. Her ship had been shot down by rebels orbiting Earth's backwaters. She had no interest in humans. But Silas, he disrupted all her protocols. He fixed her ship using tools made for tractors. He shared his food, which she found primitive but oddly comforting. He didn't press her with questions or beg for alien secrets. He just existed. Solid and grounded. And for a being engineered to dominate, that unsettled her. Every day, Zaret watched him work. No armor. No shields. Just hands hardened by toil and a gaze too steady to ignore. He mended fences with the same intensity she wielded a sword. He respected life without needing to conquer it. And that made her curious. Then came the night when the rebels landed. They weren't here for diplomacy. And Zaret, for the first time, found herself drawing her blade not for her mission, but for him. The night smelled of ozone and panic. The rebels didn't announce themselves, they never did. Their dropship roared overhead like a dragon coughing fire, its thrusters kicking up a hurricane of dust and dead grass. Silas stood on his porch with his arms crossed, squinting into the chaos as Zaret suited up in her remaining armor beside him. "They won't spare your land," she said without turning, her voice clipped with focus. Silas lit a cigarette. Didn't figure they would. She eyed him, briefly, then tossed him a plasma pistol. He caught it one-handed and stared at it like it was a particularly shiny rock. Fancy. Shoot straight. Zarit almost smiled. Very. When the rebels touched down, they didn't waste time. Humanoid but wiry, with skin like burnt bark and eyes like empty voids, they marched with precision. Their armor bore no insignia, just matte black, soulless. They opened fire before their boots even kissed the dirt. Silas ducked behind the tractor shed. Zarit launched into the fray, spinning like a storm of metal and light. Her blade carved arcs of fire through the darkness, slicing through machines and bone alike. But there were too many. Far too many. Silas didn't try to be a hero. He flanked the outer edge of the invaders, knocking out communication beacons, dragging scrap into makeshift blockades, disabling their mobility bit by bit. One rebel soldier noticed, lunged. Silas caught the attacker mid-pounce with a wrench to the skull. It wasn't graceful. But it worked. Zarit saw it. The way he moved, not fast, but with purpose. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to deny the enemy control. That's what unsettled them. They were trained for confrontation, not chaos. Back, she yelled. Fall back to the silo. They regrouped behind the old grain silo. The rebels advanced in waves, their numbers seemingly endless. Zarit bled from a gash near her temple. Silas had a gash of his own, running from shoulder to elbow, but he only winced when he loaded his next round. They want your ship, Silas said. Zarit nodded. And they'll torch everything else to get it. He looked at the old water tower nearby. A plan began to stitch itself behind his eyes. You got any of those fusion cells left? She blinked. Yes. Why? Because I'm thinking we give them what they want, in pieces. 30 minutes later, the trap was set. They lured the rebels toward the barn, baiting them with false signals and an open path. Zarit stood visible on the rooftop, her glowing blade humming, daring them closer. Silas hid in the shadows, clutching a detonator. When the rebels were inside, 25 of them, clustered in tight formation, Silas gave the nod. Zarit jumped clear, landing with a roll just as the tower blew. It wasn't a boom. It was a sunrise. The explosion lit up the night for miles, a towering pillar of fire and ash swallowing metal and bodies alike. The shockwave knocked them both back. Silence followed, total and unreal. Then, a soft cough. A rebel scout had survived. Half melted, staggering, weapon raised. Zarit was too far. Silas was closer, but unarmed. He didn't think. He moved. The shovel he'd dropped earlier was still buried halfway in the ground. He ripped it free and hurled it with every ounce of strength left in his body. It struck. The rebel dropped. Zarit just stared. You are infuriating. Silas shrugged, breathing heavy. Ain't dead yet. After the fight, they stood amid the ruin. Her ship still smoked, half-wrecked. The field was scorched. But the rebels were gone. Why do you fight? Zarit asked, softly. Silas looked at the horizon. This is mine. I built it. I'll bury what tries to break it. She stepped closer. You don't fear me. Or them. Why? He turned to her, meeting her eyes. Fear don't plant seeds. Work does. She blinked. And for the first time in her life, she felt something foreign. Not command. Not victory. Not even duty. Respect. And something deeper, she couldn't yet name. The stars turned above them, silent witnesses to something far more dangerous than war. Connection. The sun hadn't yet risen when Zarit sat alone beside the ruins of the water tower, sharpening her blade out of habit more than need. Silas had gone back to the house to mend his arm with stubborn glue and gauze, refusing medical tech with his usual grunt, too fancy. Zarit had spent a lifetime mastering enemies across star systems, but none had made her feel as off-balance as this earthborn farmer. She had protocols for war, strategy for politics, doctrine for everything. But there was no manual for what he made her feel. A message buzzed through her half-functioning communicator. It came encrypted with Vanguard codes. Zarit decoded it with a flick of her wrist. Zarit. Your signal was lost. Status update required. Extraction imminent. Prioritize primary objective, eliminate all witnesses. Her stomach turned. Silas. She shut the message off and looked toward the farmhouse, its crooked frame glowing with soft lantern light. Inside, he was humming. Fixing coffee. Replacing windows shattered in the fight. As if yesterday had been just another storm. She remembered the first time she stood before her commander, sworn to uphold the Vanguard Code. Conquer. Expand. Destroy threats. Was Silas a threat? She stood, tensed, blade sheathed. That's when the second ship landed. It wasn't Vanguard. It came cloaked, silent, hovering just above the northern ridge before touching down with barely a breath. Black with silver etching. Rebellion class. Not the same rebels they'd fought before, this one moved like it had purpose. Elite. Assassins, maybe. Or, worse. Zarit ran. Silas met her halfway. Another party crashin'? Yes, she said, unsheathing her blade. This one isn't here for fun. They didn't have time to prepare. The newcomers didn't announce. They just walked through the cornrows, faceless, noiseless, like death in motion. Their leader stepped forward tall, masked in carbon fiber, voice warped by a modulator. We are the cleaners. The Vanguard has failed its purge. We are here to finish it. Zarit stiffened. There is no need for cleansing. The situation is resolved. Incorrect, the leader said, pointing directly at Silas. He contaminates you. In one blink, Zarit stepped in front of Silas. Then you'll go through me. The cleaners didn't argue. They attacked. Unlike the rebels, these weren't sloppy. They moved with inhuman precision, striking as one. Zarit was fast, but not invincible. Silas pulled her out of the way just in time as a spear of plasma split the air where her heart had been. They fought side by side. She blocked, he countered. He created diversions, she exploited them. Her blade clashed against steel and light, slicing through cloaks and bone. But the cleaners kept coming. You're not winning this one with shovels, Zarit said. Didn't bring a shovel, Silas muttered. Brought this. He flicked a switch behind the barn, triggering the old windmill's core, now jury-rigged to pulse an electromagnetic burst. It fired. The field rippled blue. The cleaners jerked, armor glitching. One froze mid-strike. Another shorted and collapsed. Zarit took the chance, driving her blade through the leader's chest. The body fell. The others twitched, then retreated. Not in defeat. In calculation. They vanished into the forest, leaving behind only the hum of scorched grass. Silas sank to the ground, coughing. Well. That worked. Sorta. Zarit dropped beside him. You saved me. He looked at her. You saved me first. Their eyes met. Something long unspoken burned between them. Zarit reached into her belt and pulled out a silver disc. She crushed it. What was that? Silas asked. My tracking beacon. No more missions. No more extraction. You just quit. I chose, she said. Silas gave a slow nod. You know they'll come back. I know, she replied. But I'm staying. As dawn broke, casting gold over the battered fields, the pair sat in silence. No words, no weapons. Just the sound of wind and the quiet knowing, they had crossed a line neither of them would ever uncross. Weeks passed. The fields began to bloom again, though parts of the land bore burn scars that wouldn't heal with time. Silas didn't mind. He called them reminders. Zarit, too, remained less a guest now, more a fixture. She stopped wearing her armor. Stopped calling Earth primitive. She learned the language of silence, of coffee at dawn, of working side by side with hands in soil instead of on weapons. One morning, while tending the tomato vines, she spoke. I never knew peace could feel like a fight. A constant one. Silas grunted, tying up a sagging stalk. That's 'cause peace is work. Just like war, but the goal's different. She mulled that over, her hands dirty and her gaze distant. I was built to win. But here, it feels like I'm building instead. He nodded. 'Cause now you got something worth buildin' for. Then, inevitably, the sky changed again. A Vanguard flagship entered low orbit. Zarit recognized its shadow instantly. Royal blue, three-pronged silhouette, a high court vessel. Not a patrol. Not a cleaner. This was political. She met them at the field's edge, where they hovered in sleek robes and sneering formality. Zarit of the Vanguard, the speaker intoned. You have violated Prime Directive 4.3 by severing contact, resisting extraction, and consorting with a lesser species. Silas stood just behind her. Not afraid. Just watching. She didn't flinch. I've resigned. You have no claim over me. The speaker smirked. Your resignation is not accepted. Come willingly, or we will strip your caste, your legacy, and your record. You will be erased. Zarit tilted her head. Then erase me. The tribunal whispered among themselves, unsure how to handle defiance not met with rage, but peace. You've gone rogue, one said. No, she corrected. I've gone human. The lead delegate sneered. Then you are dead to the Vanguard. She stepped forward. Good. Because out here, I've found something worth living for. The standoff broke with silence. Not lasers. Not blades. Just a standoff where one side blinked, and the other didn't. They left. Not out of mercy, but because they knew they had no power here. Later that night, under the rusted tin roof of the porch, Silas handed her a carved wooden pendant, a charm his mother used to wear for luck. She touched it like it was sacred. What's it mean? She asked. He leaned back. Means you belong somewhere, even when the rest says you don't. Zarit looked up at the stars. For the first time, they felt like home instead of orders. I used to think strength was in dominance, she whispered. But it's in choice. In staying when leaving is easier. In growing where you're not expected to. He gave her a side glance. Took you long enough. She smirked. As fireflies lit the field and the wind whispered through the stalks, the farm breathed like a living thing. Not a battlefield. Not a colony. Just a home. And maybe that was the lesson all along. True strength isn't measured by how much power you wield, but by how gently you can hold something precious. And never let go.